November 23, 2024. A date that will forever be remembered as the day the carefully constructed facade of royal privacy came crashing down, exposing a scandal that reaches into the very heart of the Windsor family. What began as a standard, mundane security protocol at Gatcombe Park, the private Gloucestershire estate of Princess Anne, has mushroomed into a crisis that threatens to rewrite history. Palace sources describe it as a routine inspection of the Princess Royal's private security facilities, a boring, bureaucratic necessity. But there was nothing routine about what happened next. Deep within the estate, hidden behind reinforced steel doors, in a temperature-controlled vault that few even knew existed, royal guards stumbled upon a secret that had been buried for over 27 years. They uncovered a collection of jewelry. But these were not just any pieces of gold or silver. These were the missing treasures of Diana, Princess of Wales. For nearly 3 decades, the world, and more importantly, her sons William and Harry, had been led to believe these items were gone forever. The royal family had publicly claimed these specific pieces were either lost in the chaos of 1997, stolen, or absorbed into official crown collections. That narrative has now been completely demolished. The revelation has sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, primarily because of where they were found. Princess Anne has long been regarded as the most dutiful, uncontroversial, and ironclad member of the family. She is the one who follows the rules. Yet now, she finds herself at the center of questions that challenge her reputation for unwavering integrity. How did Diana's personal property end up in Anne's private vault? Why were they hidden? And perhaps most troubling of all, who else knew they were there? These are not minor trinkets that could be easily overlooked. Each piece carries immense historical and emotional significance. The inventory includes the famous sapphire bracelet, estimated to be worth over £200,000 when Diana last wore it. Its value today is immeasurable, not just in currency, but in what it represents. It was one of the last pieces she was photographed wearing while alive. The discovery raises immediate, devastating questions about the chain of custody for Diana's possessions. Official records maintained by the Royal Collection Trust show absolutely no mention of these pieces being transferred to Princess Anne or stored at Gatcombe Park. In fact, palace inventories compiled in the months following Diana's death listed these exact items as missing or unaccounted for. For years, speculation has run rampant. Did Diana give them away? Were they stolen? The royal family maintained that Diana's jewelry was handled with the utmost care and respect. They claimed missing pieces were likely removed by Diana herself before her death. The discovery at Gatcombe Park proves that was a lie. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a concealment. And the timing could not be worse. The official explanation hastily provided by palace sources that Anne was merely safeguarding the jewelry for William and Harry until they were old enough strains all credibility. William is 42 years old. Harry is 40. If Anne was holding these in trust, why were they never mentioned? Why were they kept in a vault so secure that even routine palace inventories missed them for a quarter of a century? The silence speaks volumes. This wasn't protection, it was possession, and now the vault is open. To fully grasp the magnitude of this scandal, we must understand that the jewelry discovered in Princess Anne's vault represents far more than precious metals and gemstones. Each piece tells a specific, intimate story of Diana's life, her relationships, and her evolution from a shy aristocratic teenager into a global icon who terrified the establishment. These were not random items. They were chapters of a biography that the palace tried to erase. The sapphire and diamond bracelet found behind those reinforced doors has a particularly poignant and devastating history. Diana acquired it in the summer of 1997, just weeks before her death. It was a gift to herself, purchased during a shopping trip in Monte Carlo with Dodi Fayed. Photographs from that trip show Diana radiant and relaxed, the bracelet gleaming on her wrist as she stepped off Dodi's yacht. This was not a royal heirloom or a stiff diplomatic gift. It was a symbol of her freedom, something Diana chose for herself during what would tragically be one of the last happy periods of her life. The fact that this specific symbol of her independence ended up locked away in Anne's vault, rather than passed to her sons, raises disturbing questions about who made that decision and why. Then there are the emerald earrings. These have their own complex provenance, having been presented to Diana during the Wales tour of Oman in November 1993. The Sultan himself selected them, recognizing Diana's well-known love of emeralds. She wore them frequently. But what makes their presence in Anne's vault especially troubling is that these were official gifts received during a state visit. Under normal protocols, such items are not private property. They should have been catalogued and potentially returned to the royal collection or offered to the Omani government. Instead, they were hidden away, their existence denied, effectively stolen from history. But it is the pearl choker that has generated the most intense speculation. This 7-strand choker with its distinctive sapphire and diamond clasp was one of Diana's favorites in her final years. It was bold and modern, perfectly suited to her evolving style. She wore it to a Christie's charity preview in June 1997, paired with a sleek black gown, an image that showed how far she had come from the demure bride of 1981. Experts who have seen photographs of the recovered piece confirm it is unmistakably the same choker. This was not a replica. This was Diana's personal signature piece. How did these items end up with Princess Anne? To answer that, you have to look at the icy relationship between the two women. Anne, 15 years Diana's senior, represented the old guard of royal duty and discretion. She viewed Diana's emotional openness and media savvy with deep suspicion. Diana, in turn, found Anne cold and unwelcoming. In her infamous 1995 Panorama interview, Diana spoke about her troubles with Charles and the Queen, but said little about Anne. That silence spoke volumes to those who understood the dynamics at play. Anne disapproved of Diana's approach to royal life. That Anne would now be the secret keeper of Diana's most personal possessions feels like a final, twisted act of control. The discovery of the pearl choker has acted as a catalyst, prompting a comprehensive and aggressive review of all jewelry associated with Diana's estate. According to sources familiar with the late princess's will and the subsequent distribution of her assets, this specific choker was explicitly intended to be included among the items divided between her sons, William and Harry. Its absence from official inventories in 1997 was noted at the time but was conveniently attributed to the chaos surrounding Diana's sudden death and the rushed nature of cataloging her possessions. We now know it was not lost in chaos. It was deliberately secured in Princess Anne's vault the entire time. This realization has triggered a quiet but intense legal mobilization. Lawyers representing the separate interests of both William and Harry have begun their own investigation, painstakingly cross-referencing archival photographs of Diana wearing various pieces against the official inventories compiled after her death. They are looking for gaps in the record, and what they are finding is alarming. Early reports suggest the items found at Gatcombe Park may be just the beginning of a much larger hoard. There are whispers within palace circles of other significant pieces that cannot be accounted for. Among the missing are a diamond necklace Diana wore to a state banquet in 1991, a pair of ruby earrings gifted by the Emir of Kuwait, and several designer watches that Diana favored for casual wear. None of these items appear in the official distribution records, yet all were photographed on Diana in the years before her death. The question that now haunts everyone following this story is simple but devastating. If these pieces were in Anne's vault, where else might Diana's missing possessions be hidden? Are they scattered across other royal residences? Balmoral? Sandringham? The financial value of the discovered jewelry is substantial. Conservative estimates place the combined worth at over £2 million, but that is almost beside the point. The real value is emotional and symbolic. These were Diana's personal choices, tangible connections to the mother, William and Harry, lost far too young. They should have been treasures passed down to her sons. Instead, they were locked away, hidden from the world and from the princes themselves. The psychological impact of this discovery on Diana's sons cannot be overstated. Both men have been open about their ongoing struggle to process their mother's death. Now they must confront the reality that their own aunt, a senior royal they were told to respect, secretly held items that should have been theirs. Palace insiders report that William, in particular, is furious. Known for his measured approach and reluctance to rock the boat, the Prince of Wales has allegedly demanded a full accounting of every piece of Diana's jewelry and exactly where it ended up. He wants to know who authorized the transfer of these items to Anne, who knew they were there, and why this information was kept from him and his brother for over 2 decades. The betrayal is not just institutional, it is deeply personal. The palace's initial response to this unfolding catastrophe has been predictable, yet wholly inadequate. Unnamed sources have desperately tried to downplay the significance of the discovery, suggesting the jewelry was simply being stored safely, that there was no sinister intent, and that Princess Anne was merely doing William and Harry a favor by protecting these precious items from the chaos of history. But that explanation falls apart the moment it is subjected to even the slightest scrutiny. If Anne was truly acting as a benevolent guardian, safeguarding these heirlooms for her nephews, why was there absolutely no documentation? Why were William and Harry never informed, not even privately? And most damningly, why, when both men are now in their 42nd with wives and families of their own, were these pieces never offered to them? A trust that is kept secret from the beneficiaries is not a trust, it is a deception. This scandal strikes a fatal blow to Princess Anne's specific brand of royal mystique. For decades, Anne has built her reputation on reliability, discretion, and an unflinching commitment to duty. She is widely regarded as the hardest-working member of the royal family, a no-nonsense figure who refuses to court publicity. But the discovery at Gatcombe Park has cast this carefully cultivated image in a troubling new light. How does the Princess Royal's legendary discretion square with secretly holding jewelry that belonged to Diana? What does duty mean when it involves hiding assets from the rightful heirs? To understand the motivation, we must look at the ideological chasm between the two women. Diana represented everything Anne was raised to distrust: emotional availability, media manipulation, and a willingness to break royal protocol in service of personal authenticity. When Diana gave her Panorama interview discussing her struggles with bulimia and her marriage, Anne was reportedly appalled. She genuinely believed Diana was damaging the monarchy, undermining the careful work of generations. This context makes the jewelry discovery all the more complex and sinister. Was Anne truly safeguarding these pieces, or was she keeping them from Diana's sons as a form of posthumous punishment? Was she making a unilateral decision about what William and Harry deserved to inherit, based on her own judgment of their mother? Sources close to Princess Anne have rushed to her defense, insisting that her intentions were entirely honorable. They claim that in the chaotic aftermath of Diana's death, Anne stepped in to secure items to prevent them from being lost or stolen. According to this version of events, she was simply waiting for the boys to be emotionally ready. But waiting 27 years? Waiting through their weddings? Waiting until a security guard accidentally found them? That is not protection. That is hoarding. The timeline of how exactly these treasures made their way from Kensington Palace to the vault at Gatcombe Park remains murky, obscured by the fog of grief and bureaucratic panic that descended upon the House of Windsor in 1997. We know the dates. Diana died on August 31st. Her funeral was September 6th. In the agonizing weeks that followed, while the world mourned, a quieter, colder operation was underway behind palace walls. Official records suggest that Diana's personal possessions were catalogued at Kensington Palace by the end of October 1997, but former staff members have since admitted that the process was far from the meticulous procedure one would expect. It was rushed, chaotic, and emotionally charged. Items were packed hastily, moved between locations, and in some cases, simply lost in the shuffle. It was during this specific window of administrative anarchy that the jewelry now found in Anne's vault vanished from the official inventories. For years, some observers have speculated that Princess Anne was not acting as a rogue agent, but rather following orders from the very top, Queen Elizabeth II herself. The theory goes that the Queen, concerned about the troublesome nature of Diana's legacy, ordered certain items removed from circulation, perhaps because they represented painful memories, or perhaps to prevent them from becoming relics for a rival court of public opinion led by William and Harry. Anne, ever the dutiful daughter, would have complied without question. However, this theory collapses under the weight of logic and protocol. If the Queen wanted these items secured, there were official channels to do so. The Royal Collection Trust could have legally claimed them. They could have been transferred to the secure royal vaults at Windsor with full documentation. There was absolutely no need for secrecy, deception, or a private stash in Gloucestershire. Moreover, sources close to the late Queen insist she would never have approved such a clandestine arrangement. Elizabeth II was meticulous about protocol and deeply concerned with the stability of her legacy. The idea that she would risk a future scandal by secretly stashing her grandson's inheritance at her daughter's country estate does not align with her character. That leaves us with the most disturbing conclusion of all. Anne was the sole decision-maker. It suggests that the Princess Royal, for reasons of her own, chose to intercept jewelry that belonged to her nephews. She took possession of it, hid it, and then maintained that silence for over 2 decades, through William's wedding, through Harry's wedding, and through the births of the children who should have inherited these heirlooms. This wasn't a royal order. It was a personal appropriation. The discovery at Gatcombe Park cannot be viewed in isolation. It is merely the latest, most undeniable piece of evidence in a larger pattern of secrecy, selective memory, and institutional self-protection that has characterized the royal family's handling of Diana's legacy since the moment she died. To truly understand how a diamond choker ends up in a bank vault for 27 years, we must examine the broader conspiracy of silence that descended upon Kensington Palace in the autumn of 1997. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, Diana's apartments became a fortress of grief and confusion. While millions of mourners wept outside the gates, inside, a desperate operation was underway. Officials rushed to secure Diana's belongings before they could be compromised. Former staff members have described an atmosphere of barely controlled panic. Rooms needed to be cleared, possessions catalogued, and decisions made about what belonged to the crown and what belonged to the boys. But beneath the surface of this necessary administrative work, something darker was occurring. Decisions were being made about which parts of Diana's story would be preserved and which would be quietly erased. The jewelry that ended up in Anne's vault was not the only casualty of this process. Documents that have recently come to light reveal that palace officials were deeply concerned about Diana's personal papers. Letters, diaries, and private photographs were quickly removed from Kensington Palace and taken to undisclosed locations. Some vanished entirely, their current whereabouts unknown even to Diana's closest relatives. Palace insiders have revealed that in the months following Diana's death, a small group of senior royals and trusted advisors met regularly to discuss how to manage her legacy. These meetings were never officially documented, but those who remember describe intense debates. Prince Philip reportedly took a hard line, arguing that Diana had caused enough trouble and that her legacy should be controlled to prevent further damage. The strategy was clear: celebrate the charity work, acknowledge the fashion, but erase the criticism of the firm, the mental health struggles, and the complexity. This campaign of control extended to the Spencer family. Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, has spoken bitterly about being sidelined in matters concerning his sister's legacy. He was not consulted about which items went where, and he certainly had no idea that significant pieces were being held at Gatcombe Park. But the most damning evidence comes from within the palace staff itself. One former staff member, speaking on condition of anonymity, described a chilling scene in late September 1997. They watched as Princess Anne's personal secretary arrived at Kensington Palace. This individual was given access to Diana's jewelry collection and spent several hours examining various pieces. When they left, they were carrying a small leather case. No record was made of this visit. No record was made of what was inside that case. We now know exactly what was inside. The vault at Gatcombe Park, where Diana's jewelry was discovered, is not merely a secure storage facility for expensive trinkets. It is a physical manifestation of the royal family's obsession with secrecy. a black box where inconvenient truths go to disappear. To understand why Diana's possessions ended up there, we must understand the unique role Gatcombe Park plays in the royal ecosystem. Purchased by the Queen in 1976, this 730-acre estate in Gloucestershire has always been Princess Anne's sanctuary. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, it is a private residence, not subject to the same level of public scrutiny, tourist footfall, or official oversight. It is the perfect place to hide things. And, as it turns out, Diana's jewelry was far from the only secret buried there. The security audit that exposed the jewelry also uncovered other items that the House of Windsor has fought desperately to keep hidden. Among the most explosive finds were bundles of letters between Princess Margaret and Group Captain Peter Townsend. These are the documents of a romance that nearly tore the monarchy apart in the 1,950 seconds. Margaret reportedly believed she had destroyed them to protect her privacy and the Queen's reputation. Yet, here they were, preserved in Anne's keeping. Their survival suggests that in this family, nothing is ever truly deleted. It is just archived for leverage. Even more politically sensitive are the financial documents related to the Duke of Windsor, the former King Edward VIII. These papers allegedly detail secret payments made by the royal family to the Duke long after his abdication in 1936. These were payments never publicly disclosed, potentially contradicting the official narrative that he was cut off. Their presence in the vault raises uncomfortable questions about blackmail and what the former king might have threatened to reveal. But the most immediate threat to the current monarchy lies in the other Diana-related items found alongside the jewelry. Sources describe personal letters, private photographs, and even video recordings. These materials were supposedly secured after her death to protect her dignity. But their presence at Gatcombe suggests a different motive entirely: control. The royal family wanted to possess any evidence that might contradict their preferred version of history. This places Princess Anne in a complex light. She may not be a simple thief, but rather the family's designated vault keeper. Yes, she held Diana's jewelry without authorization, but was she acting as the ultimate loyalist, hoarding the family's dirty laundry to ensure it never aired in public? If so, her vault was not just a safe, it was a prison for the truth. To understand the jewelry scandal, one must understand the fundamental mechanism of the British monarchy. It has survived for over 1,000 years, not merely through pageantry, but by adapting to changing times while maintaining an aura of impenetrable mystique. Central to this survival has been the ruthless control of information. Scandals that might have toppled other institutions have been managed, minimized, or buried entirely under the weight of royal protocol. Diana was the ultimate threat to this system because she refused to play by these rules. She took her story directly to the public, bypassing the palace gatekeepers and shattering the facade of perfection. The jewelry discovered in Princess Anne's vault represents the palace's cold, calculated response to Diana's defiance. The logic was brutal but effective. If they could not control Diana in life, they would control her legacy in death. They would decide which parts of her story were told and which were locked away in the dark. They would determine exactly what her sons inherited and what remained hidden. This wasn't just about greed, it was about narrative sanitation. And for over 2 decades, this strategy worked perfectly. William and Harry grew up with carefully curated memories of their mother, supplemented by photographs and stories the palace approved. They were given some of her jewelry, enough to feel connected to her, enough to satisfy the public eye, but they were denied the pieces that might prompt difficult questions. They didn't get the bracelet from her final summer with Dodi Fayed. They didn't get the choker she wore when she was rebuilding her life after Charles. Those items were dangerous because they represented Diana as an independent woman, not just a royal mother. So, Anne locked them away. The vault was the physical manifestation of the palace's desire to edit history. But now, that vault has been opened not by a change of heart, but by a bureaucratic accident. A routine security check has exposed what the palace hoped would remain buried forever. The carefully constructed image of dignity and duty has been fatally compromised by the revelation that the monarchy was willing to steal from orphans to protect its own image. The consequences of this discovery are rapidly escalating from a family embarrassment into a full-blown constitutional and legal crisis. Legal experts analyzing the situation believe that William and Harry now have substantial grounds to demand a full forensic audit of their mother's estate. This would not be a polite family request. It would be a legal demand for the return of any items taken without proper authorization. Such an audit could be catastrophic for the palace, potentially revealing not just jewelry, but the hidden documents, photographs, and tapes that shed new light on Diana's life and death. There is also the unavoidable question of criminal liability. If items were removed from Diana's estate without authorization, if official inventories were deliberately falsified, and if assets were hidden from rightful heirs for decades, crimes may have been committed. British law regarding theft and fraud applies to the royal family just as it does to any citizen, at least in theory. While no one seriously expects the Princess Royal to be handcuffed or face criminal charges, the political will to prosecute a senior royal simply does not exist. The mere existence of potential criminal conduct gives William and Harry immense leverage. Beyond the courtroom, the court of public opinion has already delivered its verdict. The reaction has been swift and damning. Social media has exploded with outrage, with hashtags calling for transparency and accountability trending worldwide. For Diana's devoted admirers, this confirms their worst suspicions, that the institution not only mistreated her in life, but pillaged her legacy in death. The palace's standard strategy issue, vague statements and wait for the storm to pass, is failing miserably because the evidence is physical and undeniable. The jewelry exists. It was in Anne's vault. No amount of spin can erase that fact. William and Harry were reportedly blindsided by this betrayal. Sources close to the Prince of Wales describe him as coldly furious. He is a man who values order and loyalty, and he has found neither in his own aunt. He is demanding answers through official channels, treating this not as a family dispute, but as a breach of trust. For Harry, the revelation is vindication. He has reportedly told friends that this proves everything he has been saying about the institution for years. They cannot be trusted. They prioritize image over integrity, and they lack basic loyalty to their own blood. The relationship between the brothers and Princess Anne, never warm, has now fractured completely. The damage is done, and the monarchy is bleeding credibility. King Charles finds himself in an impossible strategic and emotional bind. His sister, his staunchest ally, is accused of hiding jewelry that belonged to his late ex-wife, jewelry that rightfully belonged to his sons. He is paralyzed. He cannot be seen to protect Anne without permanently alienating William and Harry, proving their worst fears about the institution correct. Yet, he cannot punish Anne publicly without tearing the fabric of the working monarchy apart. Every option leads to catastrophe. Palace insiders suggest Charles has ordered a complete review, desperate to know what else is hidden, but the trail is cold. Records from 1997 are incomplete. Key witnesses are dead, and the institutional memory is selective. The silence from Princess Anne herself, who has retreated behind the walls of protocol, only fuels the fire. Her refusal to explain her actions leaves a vacuum that is being filled by the most damaging speculation, that this was malice, not protection. The damage to the brand is profound. Polls show declining support, especially among younger Britons who see this not as a royal quirk, but as theft. The scandal confirms the narrative that the institution is cruel, secretive, and self-serving. Diana chose transparency. The family chose to hide her legacy in a vault. The contrast is devastating. As lawyers negotiate the return of the sapphire bracelet, the emeralds, and the choker to William and Harry, one thing is certain. The vault at Gatcombe Park has been opened, both literally and metaphorically. The secrets are out. The carefully constructed image of dignity and duty has been fatally compromised. The jewelry will go home, but the trust? That is gone forever. The fairy tale is dead, killed by the family's own obsession with control.